So how are we going to do this? So we're going to use something called UV coordinates, and you're going to have to get familiar with them in order to do your assignments. And the basic idea is really simple. I have my 3D object with a bunch of triangles, and for each triangle, I'm going to look up in my texture at some position, right? So I'm going to have a U, it's called U and V typically. I think your textbook may use S and T. So XYZ is usually reserved for the geometric location in our computer graphics, and UV is normally used for our texture location. So for each vertex, we're going to have a UV coordinate in addition to XYZ that's going to tell us where to look up in our texture. So here's a triangle with different UV coordinates. So here's another diagram of the same thing. On the left, we have a texture here, and it's got some nonsense picture on it. And this texture is 64 pixels wide, 64 high. And what we store on our triangle is the coordinates that we want to go look up from this texture. Now, we normally store these normalized 0 to 1. So the same way colors could be 0 to 255 or could be 0 to 1, we would normally store our texture 0 to 1. Here it's labeled with the actual coordinates that you're going to go look up. So here's a more diagrammatic, right, without the picture way of the same thing. So here's our texture. The middle one is our texture. Here's a square, the side of a cube that we want to draw, right? So you all have sides of a cube. Most of you have probably made your cube with two big triangles rather than a bunch of small triangles like this. And we have to put the UV coordinates on these positions in addition to their XYZ. So for this triangle, because these were the locations of the UV, so it's the mapping. Here's where it's going to land on this would be a texture image. And then when we go render our object, we're wishing our texture image landed on our object on this side, right? We're going to get texture on the side of our cube. So this is the same thing as the previous pictures. Here's a visualization of what's going on with texture coordinates. So I've only said that we specify it at the vertices. So that's nice, but I have all of these pixels in the middle. What's going to go in the middle? So a good way to debug your texture coordinates is going to turn out to be to stuff them into color, right? So if I passed U and V for my texture coordinates, while I'm still debugging and it's not working yet, it's going to turn out that a good idea is just call this red and green, and in your fragment shader or in your vertex shader, stuff this information into the color, and then you're going to get a picture that looks like this, and you're going to be able to see what's going on with your texture coordinates. So before you actually have the texture rendering in. So what's happening? Why am I getting colors in between? So this is interpolation. We've studied bilinear interpolation, barycentric interpolation. This is barycentric interpolation from these coordinate values. The graphics card is doing this for you. And when I get to a particular pixel in the middle, it's going to interpolate the things that my vertex shader specified to get to this position. So here's an example of some sort of real texture and triangles. So here's a texture with U and V. And then here's my object with a bunch of things. And here we've just put coloring on it so that we can sort of see where are things mapping in these UV coordinates. So our basic algorithm is that we're going to go take our triangle, take our parts, map them onto UV. The graphics card's going to do the interpolation. It's going to end up from where we're at. So here we are. Here's a picture. It's adding detail. So this is not this red and green false color, even though it looks like crazy colors. This is some color that was painted by the artist to make their monster look like this. You can see the lips they've got some kind of color painted into this UV space. And this is a common thing that happens. If I have some texture, the artist goes and paints in this space in order to get it to come out on the 3D object. So here's no texture. Here's with the texture, right? And then these little triangles, each triangle is going to map to a specific location onto this texture map. So here's a different scene. It's going to allow us to illustrate another point. So here we have textures on bricks. Can we reuse these things? Like, is it okay to use them in multiple places? Oh yeah, sure. We can have our texture wrapping around. So here's our texture coordinates in this case. So you see that when I got to this boundary, right? So this is say 0 to 1, and now I got to 1.1 and 2. So you can set a special mode in the texture to tell it to wrap, and you can make your texture mode coordinates. If they go past 1, they're going to end up wrapping back, so that we end up reusing them. So this is certainly something that you can do when you're specifying your UV coordinates. For real objects, they're sort of hard to specify, and we end up with things that look like this. So this is coming from some artist tool, right? I have my object, and then I have all of these little pieces which are packed together into a set of textures which go to this object. And this little piece here, I don't know where this one maps. This little piece here maps to this position in the texture or something like this. So the artist tools have things like this. Now, of course, in this class, we're using simple things like cubes on purpose so that you can just type in the UV coordinates. In terms of debugging, when you don't have any texture working at all, you want to just look at the colors of your UV coordinates. As soon as you have a texture working, don't put your Minecraft brick texture first. You can't tell whether it's upside down or turn left or turn right. Go get a texture that looks like this one. Just search the web for debugging texture map, right? And you're going to find some pictures like this. Put that thing on your object. And then you're going to get a picture that looks like this. And you'll be able to see, where did my texture go and what's going on. Now, of course, you won't have anything this complicated that you're trying to map onto, but nevertheless, trying to figure out, why does this half of my cube have the right texture and this half seems to go crazy or turned all red? If you put a debugging texture, it's going to be faster to figure that out. So I recommend that as a step for you to take.